So hello everyone, this is the Everything Goes podcast with Gus. Today I have Snake in here. What's up, Snake?
What's up?
How you doing,
guys?
man?
I'm doing good.
So yeah, man. So how's your day?
It was good. Just chilling. Enjoying the weekend.
Hot.
Yeah.
Got to get used to the heat out here in the valley.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not as hot as well, actually, you know what? The difference between the heat here in the Antelope Valley, I think you guys got more wind. So you guys don't feel the heat as much, I feel, whenever I'm out there.
Oh, yeah, it's true. It's cooler out there for sure.
Yeah. So what's up, man? Are you ready to talk to the audience today?
Yeah.
Since this is your...
I think I'm a lot more prepared this time around than last time.
So we had you on last time with to talk about the 420 podcast. This
Yep.
time, guess what we're talking about?
What we're talking about?
We're talking about the 80s, bro.
There you go.
It's a decade that everybody loves, and we can't get away from it. Before we go into the topic, just let me remind the audience what the 80s was like. 80s is the era of the bright colors, the big hair, long hair. Even if you had long hair, you had hairspray on it to make it stand up. So you had to wear hairspray, flat tops, the Walkman, which I had, hip hop, and of course, rock, which is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That's when rock was popping out there back in those days.
At its best.
And of course, my Showtime Lakers, for those that remember the 80s. Birds Celtics, and the rise of pop music.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. So what do you remember about the 80s? Matter of fact, how old were you in the 80s? Were you even like old enough to remember the 80s?
86. So I was I was born towards the end of the 80s, but my whole DNA is all about the 80s. So I ain't grown up through the 80s, but just growing up and seeing movies and everything kept me an 80s kid.
Yeah, so that's the thing with the 80s, dude. It's just that era that nobody can't forget. It's still, to this day, it's very popular. You see it on Stranger Things. You see it in movies. 80s movies still rule around here.
Yeah.
People can't forget. Those are some of the best movies out there. You still go back to watching some of those 80s classic movies, and we love the 80s. Even parties. We have 80s parties.
It was the best era.
Right?
I think it was the best era.
It's the best era. Everybody wants the old school shoes, which were, the majority are retro shoes. I don't know if there's a craze going on with retro stuff. Look at the games.
A lot of the old stuff is coming back.
Right?
Like all the 80s stuff is becoming
man,
popular
it's
again.
Very popular. It's cool to be a nerd.
Yeah.
I think.
It's a good time.
Back then, a nerd was a nerd, but now it's cool to be a nerd, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot different now.
Yeah, so it's cool collecting cards. Well, let me before we get into the topic, this is what I remember about the 80s because I grew up in the 80s. Like I said, we talked about the long hair, the hairspray. I remember the denim shorts or denim, not the denim short, but the denim pants. These funky colors all the time, like bright colors. I remember MTV. I wanted my MTV back in those days.
Yeah.
The music was great. I still listen to it. I'm a big 80s fan. I still listen to it's KEarth 101, but it's 80s. They play a lot of 80s now.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love that music. I still love it. So let's get into
Oh, definitely.
Snake. So let's talk about tech. What do you remember about tech back in those days?
Well, with tech, I remember VCRs. So we had a bunch of tapes, and back then it was going to the movie stores every Friday.
Yeah.
With your family, like, oh, what movies are we gonna rent this weekend and watch and stuff, and mostly everything with me with my dad. He liked to rent movies and liked to watch them all weekend long. So I remember VCRs and tapes. Like we had boombox, like put our tapes in there.
Oh, yeah,
there wasn't
the cassettes. Well, let me bring this back to you because everybody remembers the VCR, but do you remember remember it was the VHS and there was Beta? Yep. I don't know if you remember that. I don't know. For those that remember, there was two videotape styles, which was one was the VHS and the other one was the Beta box, I want to say, or something like that. And obviously the VHS won over Beta. I don't know if you remember that era.
That I don't. I was a little bit after.
Yeah, so those people that remember that era, it was either VHS or the Beta, and obviously VHS won. And the one thing I remember about the VHS, just like the cassette player, when they got stuck, you remember like taking it out and all that crap coming out of it?
Yeah.
The tape coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't what it is today where it's DVD, Blu-ray, and all that stuff.
None of that.
Oh, no, man.
I mean, but what was cool is I remember I used to always record like particular shows or
you
or even movies. There's a way to record it through your VCR.
Yeah, I remember
like
that.
Little tricks and stuff.
I would record, but that's like more in the 90s, I want to say.
That was more 90s.
Yeah, it was more 90s. But the 80s, I remember going to the video store and making it a big thing. On Friday nights, we used to walk with my pops to the video store and making sure that we wanted this movie. And we would run to see whoever got this movie because they would rent out and then you're screwed.
Yep.
We would always do that. And damn. And it pissed me off. We couldn't get a certain movie. So what else? What else do you remember in the tech version? I got my notes, so I mean,
video with me. Another thing was video game consoles. That's when Nintendo came out. I don't think Game Boy, but Atari.
I think Game Boy was around
technology.
Too. Yeah.
It just started coming out. So,
what do you remember about that era? Because I remember something different about the history of gaming in that era.
Well, I remember it starting with arcades. So when I was a kid, I used to go overseas to El Salvador and stuff, and they'll have a bunch of arcades there, and that was my thing. At the time, we had to go to the change machine with $5, get a bunch of quarters.
Yeah.
It was all old school back then. You put the quarter on the.
Okay, but this is what I remember about arcades. The arcades was big. That's a big thing. Arcades and the pinball machines.
Pinball machines, yeah.
They're big. Just to listen to the sound of the arcade or the pinball machine playing. Shit was great, man. As a kid, you were like in awe. I was in awe all the time. I was like, oh, man, I couldn't wait. Couldn't wait to go to the comic book store because that's what they had them at the comic book store. Because I was a big geek back then, dude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's specifically that era where I also had the Atari. This is before the NES. So you remember the NES where I remember the Atari.
Yeah.
So this is what happened. The Atari had some horrible games. And it was the demise of the gaming console. I don't know if you remember that part.
Well, yeah, I was about to go out of business, and then I think somebody else.
The Nintendo came around and saved the consoles.
Yeah.
Yeah, NES. That was it. That's how it became so popular because they were the saviors of all video gamers. Because the Atari had driven it so deep down into the ground that they were burying video games.
Yeah.
Specifically a video game, the E.T. video game. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me give you a little rundown on Atari. Do you remember the little joystick? It was like a
little joystick you
and
use.
A little button.
The little buttons, like 1 or 2 buttons.
So that was the Atari. Stick figures, like Pong here and there, and I think they had a Pac-Man.
Mm-hmm.
Pac-Man, and I think that was the most decent one, the Pac-Man. But they made the worst games when it came to movies, and specifically the one I just mentioned, the E.T. game. It was horrible. I don't even know what the hell I was doing, but I had it. And I saw recently a documentary on it where it was voted the worst video game of all time, and they were burying in it in the dump field. And that's what they were doing. It was one of the most horrible games ever. And it
almost killed the whole
the
whole gaming
in the early 80s. And then the NES came around and Mario Brothers, and the rest was history, man.
Yeah.
So what do you remember about the NES, man? For those that don't know what the NES is, the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yep, the original Nintendo. I remember Super Mario Brothers, which is my name's Mario, so I was like, obviously I'll be trying that game out.
Yeah.
Contra.
Oh.
I liked,
okay, that game was bad. That game was bad. Yes.
Yeah, that was my game. There's like an Addams Family game my mom bought me when I was a little kid. I'll never forget it because it was my first video game, and but it was about aliens. It's like the coolest thing. It was an Uncle Fester game, and I was just chasing people, shooting aliens the entire game.
Yeah, that game that you mentioned, Contra and Super Contra, we used to play with my cousin. Obviously, as you could tell, if you heard my other podcast, I was broke as hell growing up, so we didn't have any of that. So my cousin would come over, bring his Nintendo over, and we would play. And these are the games that I remember before I forget, because you brought up Super Contra and Contra, and they were great. They're great games. I still remember.
Yeah.
But they had the Mario Brothers. They had Donkey Kong. Do you remember Donkey Kong?
Yeah.
She was great, man. The original Donkey Kong. Obviously, they had Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3. The Legend of Zelda. I could never get into that game. My cousin was a big Zelda fan.
Yeah, so this day that game is
it's a big thing.
Cool classic now.
Yeah, and then they also had Mega Man.
That's my game.
You remember Mega Man?
Mega Man, yeah.
God, they have. My game was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. But I don't know if Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was late 80s or early 90s. I don't know. I can't remember. I don't want to say it was an 80s.
I want to say it was 80s, but I'm not entirely sure.
I know for a fact that I want to say Street Fighter 2. Actually, that was a Super NES, I think. Street Fighter 2. Never mind. So
But the original Street Fighter was from
yeah,
the
the Street
80s.
Fighter, yeah.
Yeah, but I think once it got Street Fighter 2 was when it actually finally got big. And
yeah, but Nintendo had better games. Nintendo was better games. And then late 80s, the Genesis came out, I want to say. 88, 89, around that era. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I had it.
Sega was great too, man.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, so Super, what is that? Sonic the Hedgehog?
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog. And that's
Killer
it.
Instinct.
Oh, yeah, they did that. They have a Joe Montana football, I remember.
Joe Montana, the Madden.
They had Madden?
I think Madden started in the 80s.
I don't remember that.
So. Let me double check.
Hold on.
But I'm mistaken. Actually, Madden started in the 90s, but I was
Madden.
Yeah. So I'm wrong on that one.
So but Nintendo has some great games. Great games.
Yeah, definitely do.
Okay, well, this is the other thing too. I remember the arcade system. Let's go back to the arcades because the arcades were big, and the one game that everybody had was Pac-Man. Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Man Jr., Pac-Man everything.
Yeah,
you remember that?
That was a super popular game.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
You see it at the pizza shops, at like Shakey's, or anywhere that they had any kind of arcade, you'd always see a Pac-Man in there.
Yeah, specifically Pac-Man. And I think I still play it once in a while on my phone, but it tells you how popular that game was.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's like a little thing, like
very addicting.
Balls and stuff.
Very addicting games. Yeah, very addicting. I know I was addicted to video games. Yeah. So, what else? You wanna skip into the computers and stuff? Do you remember the computers back in those days?
The first, I remember when I think it was Macintosh when they were coming out with the first computers. I remember we were going to computer class.
Oh yeah, I remember that shit.
That they had the floppy disk, and it was like a big thing. Like if you had a computer at that time.
They were, I remember that they used to have back in school, and this is elementary school, so so we're still talking tech. So you remember you specifically brought up the Macintosh, and it's the Macintosh 128K, I think that's what it's called because I have it in front of me. But specifically what you said, they would give you a floppy disk and they would make you do these programming. Do you remember that? They would train you how to even work a computer because it was so new and so it was like crazy. So they would make you do like you were a programmer just to do a line and then to draw and stuff. I remember that. And it was so horrible. I used to hate it. And you had to save your floppy disk your work and stuff. Yes, exactly. And that's how it worked. Yeah. But when they said floppy disk, they were floppy disk because they were really floppy. Do you remember that? How thin they were? And they were. Yeah, you could easily lose them or break them with ease. Yeah, so I do remember. I do remember it. For those that don't remember, the IBM, the PC launched in 1981. 1981. So it tells you how far we've gone now in 2019. Damn, almost 30 years later, 20 years later. But let's sticking with technology. You brought up the boombox and you brought up the Walkman. Yeah. Dude, I lived with them, dude. I lived with them. Having a Walkman was huge, man. Yeah. Well, those are people that don't remember. Before MP3s and before your phones, there was the Walkman, which was a cassette player that you would walk with it. You'd put it on your belt or whatever in your pocket, and you had your headphones over your ear, and you thought you were a badass. Yeah. You remember that? No, you think you're like on top of the world. Yeah. You're walking, you're actually able to listen to music. Yeah, so that was the first portable. That was like the first portable listening device, I want to say, right? Yeah. Yeah. It was literally the first one. All you could do is listen to tapes, or another big thing was the radio. Like radio was huge. Okay, so. Well, see, that's where the boombox comes in. Because if you remember in those days, there was no Bluetooth radios or Bluetooth boomboxes that you could carry, or speakers that we have now. Yeah. Back then, you had like this big old square box, and then everybody would carry around with this handle on it. And if you were cool, like a hip hop guys, you remember the hip hop guys always carrying it around on their shoulder. Blasters. Yeah, you get me? Yeah. They look cool. I want one. No, they're super sick. Right? Even till this day, they look super cool. Yeah, they're still cool. I see it all the time. I'm like, dude, I want one. I do. Those are definitely classics. So I mean, it got very popular because the hip hop culture had it everywhere. Where the b-boys would carry it around, the hip hop guys, and even the rock guys. Everybody had a boombox. They're carrying around with them everywhere they went. It was a like walking party, right? Yeah, it was. I was a big fan of that, dude. I'm still a big fan of. Okay. Carry my boombox around. That's it. What about camcorders? Oh.
I remember that was like huge when you could record somebody.
Yeah, I remember the camcorders. Camcorders were big. Matter of fact, they're huge. If you put it on your shoulder,
Yeah, they were huge actually.
Huge.
Yeah, but it was like cool. Like back then, you're like, what? You can record this person?
Yeah, my pops used to have one, and it's huge, man, because it had to hold the VCR or the VHS. You remember the VHS?
Yeah,
It's as big as your hand, like the full man's hand, like a full grown hand. So you had to carry that in there, and then you had to put it on your shoulder. I remember holding it as a kid. My shoulder be hurting. I'm like, damn, dude, I can't believe my pops be carrying this crap around. Because
it's huge.
Yeah, it was.
It is huge.
How about this? You remember this? The Motorola Dyna TAC 8000, which was also known as the first mobile phone. It was this big block. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the huge, like Zach Morris phones.
Yeah, exactly. Like those. Only the popular or the rich people had them.
Yes.
You remember? Hold on, let me get my cell phone. It was this big block coming out.
Yeah, no, you were loaded.
Yeah.
If you had a cell phone back then.
Yeah, you were cool. You were a cool guy back then if you had that. How about this? Before there was, actually, it's the beginning of the fax machine because that's where it started. Mm-hmm. It's the significant spread of the fax machine during the decade. The standardized group of fast cell terminals, whatever. The fax machine became popular in the 80s. Believe it or not.
Yeah, that's when that machine came out, right? The fax machine?
Yeah.
In the 80s?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. Because we did talk about the fax machine, the first mobile phones, the computers, the arcade, Pac-Man. Let's go into more the pop culture now. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about pop culture because that's what everybody wants to hear about, and what's so popular about the 80s. And this is the thing with the 80s. It's all about fashion, how you look. So icons in the 80s were big. They're big.
Living fast.
Right?
Living life on the edge.
Because I want the one thing that reminds me of the anybody that thinks the 80s is movies, music, and obviously the stars in the 80s, which were a lot of icons.
Yeah.
A lot of icons.
Definitely.
We spoke about this the other day. Mm-hmm. Where in the 80s we had a lot of stars.
Yeah,
so,
we did.
Do you want to start with movies or do you want to start with music?
We start with movies. If you want to start with movies. Yeah.
Okay, well let me flip my notes over to the movies. Okay. Do you want to start with notable movies or notable? I mean, we could talk about movies because there's so many. If you remember that era, there was a bunch of family movies. That's what's great about the 80s.
Family movies, party movies, right? Whatever the situation was. Yeah.
Horror flicks.
Exactly.
Slasher movies.
That was the peak of that stuff.
Sci-fi. There were some great movies. I still love some of them 80s movies. Well, let's start like this. Let's go with your top 10 movies or your top movies before we get into the movies. What do you remember about the 80s? We're talking about the 80s movies.
Well, it's pretty much everything like my whole personality is like based off of the 80s. Like I just loved everything about it. The people in that era, it was just different vibe. But as far as my top 10, up there would be Fast Times, Ridgemont High,
really,
Back to the Future, Teen Wolf.
How about the shirt you're wearing now?
Big Trouble, Little China.
Yeah,
that's up there too.
Yeah, it was Bill Russell.
With Kurt Russell, yeah.
Oh, Kurt Russell, I'm sorry. Bill Russell.
Yeah, no, he's that's up there too. But I put Escape from L.A. My top
really?
10.
You like that movie, Escape from L.A.?
I love that movie.
Oh, okay.
That's up where my whole like little screen name is Snake Plissken. It's from that movie. Terminator, Predator. I think Predator is probably the best action movie.
Yeah, it's up there.
In my opinion. Lost Boys.
Yeah,
I love the Lost Boys. Like that's one of my favorite movies too. I was even talking to my wife. Batman actually is my favorite. Is actually one of my favorite movies of all time.
With the Jack Nicholson, right?
With Jack Nicholson, yeah.
It's probably one of the all-time great movies. I think it's better than some of the Batman movies now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole cast in that movie was great between Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson and.
Well, that Joker itself was probably one of the best Jokers ever.
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do because the actors at that time, and it's just a different era, and you could tell like the difference between now and.
I remember that. I remember that movie because I was a elementary kid at that time, and my friend, back in those days, when you live in the hood, everybody knows you. So if you have a friend that had a movie, we all jumped over there to his house
Mm-hmm.
to go watch that movie. So that's what we did. I remember my friend rented it, and he's all like, "Hey, you know, man, I got Batman. We're gonna watch it." Everybody on the block, everybody's kid was watching it at his apartment. I remember for
That's
that
awesome.
specifically that movie, and I was at awe, man, because I'm telling you, I was a big geek, so I was a big comic book guy. So when that movie came out, I was like, "Oh man, it's the greatest, the greatest." So what else you got on your top list?
My top list, I put Beetlejuice. I loved Weekend at Bernie's.
Really?
Bloodsport.
Oh, I forgot, man. Damn.
Critters. Gremlins. If you want to go comedy, Beverly Hills Cop. And sticking with Eddie Murphy, Coming to America.
Well, no, let's talk about your top movies, like yours, because we're going to get into the genres, too, because there's a lot of genres.
It just, there's so many movies where it's like hard for me to like put a top 10.
Well, let me give you my top movies, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if you know me, I'm a Back to the Future guy because I love time travel. I like Michael J. Fox, and I like the fact that 80s movies it's those feel good movies that make you feel like a kid.
Yeah.
And I love Back to the Future. The number one's always be the best, but all three of them are great. But I love number one and two. Number one and two are the best.
Yeah, they are. Definitely classics.
The Indiana Jones movies.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. Temple of Doom. But the best for me was probably the Last of the Crusades, which I want to say was an 89 or 88 movie. 1988. I remember walking to downtown LA or going on the bus or whatever, and we watched it with my pops out there. So that was a great movie. I'm still a big fan of Indiana Jones. The Rocky movies, dude.
Yeah.
Rocky movies were the greatest. It's one of those inspirational movies that you want to go after you watch a movie like that. You want to go outside and kick ass.
Yeah, you do.
You do, right?
It's motivational.
My favorite was number 4 Against the Russian. I'm sorry. That's it. Number 4 was when he was getting ready and he's working out in the barn, sweating, kind of like looking like me now.
No, actually, all the Rockies were great, man.
Yeah.
You can't even,
Great
to even
quote.
say like Rocky 4 is the best, because a lot of people say that too.
Yeah.
Rocky 4 is.
Some people like the first one.
Yeah.
Some people love the first one. The first two.
That shows how consistent it was. Like every movie was good.
But for me, I think it's the music on Rocky 4. As the Eye of the Tiger had just the music on in that movie specifically. Kind of, you could still work out to them. You still hear them on the radio
To this day.
Yeah, look at the Eye of the Tiger is big. It's a big song.
Yeah, it is.
And makes you want to just get all pumped up and start running up a hill with snow. Do you remember that? Start lifting stuff at the barn.
Yeah, like a big old tree trunk or something.
You remember that? You remember that era?
Yeah.
I remember the guy, I must break you. I was like, let's do this. Remember that?
Dolph Lundgren?
Yeah. I must break you. That was that movie was great. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is great.
At least for Stallone. Big star action fan. How about this one? The Karate Kid. Ralph Macchio. Great movie.
Yeah, it is. Karate Kid's a classic. You can't go wrong
Sweep
with
the
it.
leg. Sweep the leg. Remember, guys. Sweep the leg.
Cobra Kai's?
Yeah, the Cobra Kai.
Heck yeah.
Mr. Miyagi. You remember that movie?
Hell yeah. That's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, Karate Kid. Kind of like Dupree, eh? Dupree was the Cobra Kai until I got him. I got him, man. And you already said The Predator, but that movie's great. I still love
Predator.
it. Right?
Yeah, that to me, that's one of the a lot of people say that's the greatest action movie ever.
Oh, yeah. It was great.
And till this day, like, you could even show like the kids now, like, once they're old enough, you could show them that movie and they'll be in awe because that's how great that movie was.
It was. And back in those days, I was a big Arnold Schwarzenegger fan. Even if you couldn't understand them, but that movie, he was a badass.
Yeah, and they put him over the top too, like as far as like credentials.
He was bad. That movie was badass. I'm sorry, like everybody. I loved it. I loved it. That was still number one. I was so sad he didn't come back for number two, but number one was great with the big ass alien. You know that I think I don't know if it was you that told me that the alien was supposed to be played by Van Damme.
Yeah, it was supposed to be played by Van Damme. Like they had this video on YouTube where they talk about like people trying out and then Van Damme like didn't show up or something like that
because he didn't like he wanted to do all his karate and ninja stuff, but he was like, "How am I gonna do it in this thing?
This big old suit and stuff."
Thank God they didn't put him because I actually like the big ass alien.
Yeah, no,
ugly ass alien.
That's what made the movie. Him and Arnold.
And then Aliens. You remember that movie?
Aliens is great.
Aliens. I don't remember what this. I want to say it's Alien, because I think the first one was Alien.
Yeah.
Second one was Aliens, and that's with the Marines going back up to the base.
Yeah.
And that girl getting like a badass.
How about Fire in the Sky.
Fire in the Sky. I like that movie. That's that's an actual alien movie.
That's an actual alien movie, right?
Abduction. That was
Yeah.
That was in the 80s?
That was in the 80s too.
I actually like that movie because I'm all into the alien kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. So that was a good movie.
What
T2, Terminator 2.
Terminator 2.
T2, which is Terminator 2 for those who don't remember. Do you remember watching Terminator 1, the first one?
Yeah. That's Terminator 2 is what everybody knows because that was really
that was a good
that was the biggest one, but to be honest, for me, Terminator 1 is my favorite. Like watching that one where Arnold's the bad guy.
He was the bad guy.
And that's when he's fresh out of the, Mr. Olympia and all that stuff. So he's all jacked and you see this big old guy chasing you.
Yeah.
Scary, man.
I recently saw an interview on YouTube where he was talking to the interview. I forget who he was talking to, but he was all like, man, when they offered me that part, he was pissed off because he wanted more of a talking. He wanted to talk more. I guess he spoke to the director and he goes, man, you're going to be perfect for that part. And he was pissed off because he wanted to get past the language barrier where everybody said that
he couldn't get it done.
Yeah. So to get a movie like this, he said it was kind of like going back. Mm-hmm. But it was the best. It was the best for his career because it exploded him to even more or greater heights, he said.
Yeah.
Because he had like a pride thing where he didn't want to take the movie, but at the end he took it and it worked out for him.
Yeah, it worked out. I mean, that's where Predator came, and then even sticking to Arnold, like Total Recall.
Oh, okay.
Is another one of my favorite. I would put that on my top 10 too, because
Total Recall. I remember watching that movie.
And that's one of my favorite Arnold movies. That actually wasn't that popular in the 80s, but it's a great cult classic, like going to Mars and they're cutting the oxygen of the people.
Really? All I remember is the girl with the three.
With the three tatas.
You remember that?
Yeah. That's one of the most popular scenes.
As a kid, I was like, what the hell? Because I went to go watch my pops at the movie theater.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, but you know what? Going back to Terminator, the first one, this is what I remember. Him coming after the lightning, getting butt naked. You remember that?
Yeah.
Coming up butt naked, and then he's at the observatory because we would always be there. So I remember that scene, him at the observatory. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. So I remember that. But I also remember this scene. Do you remember the scene when he's taking out his eye?
Yeah, that scene is crazy.
Yeah.
Where he's obviously now you look at it like the technology's not the greatest, but like at that time when you're a kid watching it, you're seeing this guy cutting his eyeball and it looks crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it now and it looks like really funky, but at the time, a guy taking out his eyeball in the bathroom.
Yeah,
with blood coming out, right?
Yeah, it was blood coming out, and it was like real tissue.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons he wears those sunglasses, because he took out his eyeball
to keep from people seeing his
his eye. Yeah. So that's why he wears those lokes. Those sunglasses. Yeah,
and then also They Live. Like that's a movie with Roddy Piper. I thought that
you like that movie?
I love that movie.
It's a cult classic, I want to say.
Yeah, I put that as a cult classic. That's up there for me too. Like sticking with the alien subject.
Well, let me go back. Let me go back to mine because I got 3 more left. Mm-hmm. I got Ghostbusters, and I love that movie. I don't know why. I just do. Mm-hmm. I love Ghostbusters. When it comes Halloween, me and my kids be watching it all week, all day, all night. And then we go into Goonies. This is one of my favorites because it kind of reminds me of when you're hanging out with your boys when you were a little kid, doing all the bad stuff.
Yeah.
The Goonies was it, man. That was it for me.
Yeah, no, the Goonies is great. Goonies.
They're actually doing a remake on that movie. And obviously this one, I think this is where the sci-fi stuff comes in with me because this is a movie that my pops took us to watch. And it's still big. It's either you're a Marvel Universe guy or you're a Star Wars guy. And this is the movie to watch back in the 80s, which is The Empire Strikes Back. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, that's a great movie.
It was a great movie.
Yeah.
Specifically, even now, I love that movie. Mm-hmm. Of all the movies, I think that's the greatest for me. Even before the Return of the Jedi and all that.
That's the best Star Wars.
Yeah. The Empire Strikes Back, even though they, like it says on the thing, The Empire Strikes Back. So that's Darth Vader winning that battle. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So those movies are great. So now we can go into like talking about movies. Let's go into the movies. What movie do you remember that sticks out to you even to this day? Like we could talk about any movies. Any movies.
Well, for me, I'd always have Teen Wolf. That's one of my favorite all-time movies.
It's because Michael J. Fox in those times, he was big. He was a big actor.
Yeah, he was huge, and I mean, in the 80s, he was huge, even with his TV show Family Ties, and he had Teen Wolf, Back to the Future. But as far as Teen Wolf, for me, it was more of a... I love the whole story, what he explains. He's like a nerdy kid, and he doesn't get the chicks and none of that stuff, and he ends up being a wolf and getting all that stuff. Yeah. And he realizes, like, I don't need to be this guy. I can actually just be myself, and I can still be a winner. So I love the whole concept of that story.
Teen Wolf.
Yeah, so that's why that's probably one movie that sticks out for me.
That movie, he filmed it before Back to the Future.
Yeah.
So he was filming that one, and then he was filming what is it, Growing Pains? What sitcom was he doing again?
Family Ties.
Oh, Family Ties.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was doing both at the same time, when they came looking for him to star in Back to the Future,
yeah,
he wasn't able to. They started with another actor.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that?
They had another guy, and then he didn't.
It just wasn't working.
Didn't pan out, so then they went back to him, and
supposedly the movie was halfway done, and then they had to sit down, and they told him, it's not working, man. We're gonna have to let you go. And they went back to pursue Michael J. Fox,
which was the best thing, because
right?
I couldn't imagine anybody else playing that role of Marty McFly.
Marty McFly, yeah.
Yeah.
Him and his lifesaver, whatever, life jacket. Do you remember that scene? I love that movie, man.
No,
God, we could talk all day about that movie.
Back to the Future? No, it's the greatest, possibly the greatest 80s movie ever.
Look what they brought. Look what they brought from that movie. Going back to the Future, too. They have the hoverboard.
Yeah.
They go back to the 50s, and they do all those retro cars or whatever they're doing. You remember that? He does the skateboard on the scooter back in the 50s.
Yeah, when he's in the future, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, because he breaks the little kid's scooter that's made out of like wood or whatever he is, and then he's just skateboarding all around the hood right there around the block.
Yeah, and little does he know he does it like 60 years later, again in part 2.
That movie was great. Oh,
it is great.
Look at his shoes. His shoes in the number 2.
Yeah.
The self-tying shoe. They're big now. They even brought them out not too long ago.
Yeah, from Back to the Future 2. They even had Kobe came out with his own version of that shoe. Really? And he showed up in Beverly Hills in a DeLorean. And
okay.
That's pretty cool.
Well, that's the other thing.
That's
the flux capacitor in the DeLorean. I was going to tell you. Look at the car. Ugly-ass car if you see it around. But back in those days, you thought it was the shit, man.
Yeah, DeLorean was sick, dude.
Yeah. I heard they had their problem cars, but... For the movie, it looked great. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, even to this day, if you see one on the street,
really?
You'd be like, hey, that's the Back to the Future car. Like, that's all. Like,
yeah. Well, if you're old enough to remember that movie.
Yes.
Yeah, so that movie was great.
Hell yeah.
So, well, let's go into specific genres, though. Let's talk about, what do you want to talk about? What genre of movies? Because, I mean, I could bring some genres up here right now.
I mean, we can start with action.
Action movies.
If you want to start with action. For me, it'll be going back to Arnold, because I think that's where action was at its peak. So there was guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mel Gibson, Stallone, Van Damme, Seagal. Yeah, pretty much all the cream of the crop as far as the action stars.
Oh, yeah.
Bruce Willis.
There's too many action flicks out there, and I love that. That's what I love about 80s.
But that's what makes it so great, because now you don't even see these kind of movies. It makes you appreciate these ones even more.
Yeah.
But I would have Commando up there, like next to Predator. Stallone, I have Cobra. Like I remember that. You're the disease, and I'm the cure. Like I think that was a sick movie.
I remember that movie, Cobra.
Bloodsport. Put Rocky up there.
Rocky.
This is one movie I liked when I was a kid. It was called Best of the Best.
Best of the Best.
They were just about like it was like they were fighting in cages, and they were fighting for a living, and it was before even the UFC or any. At least for me, I didn't know any of that stuff was out at the time. That was like the first kind of cage fighting I ever seen.
I don't remember that movie. I don't remember.
Best of the Best. Yeah. Bloodsport, I said. Mad Max.
Yeah, that was good. My dad used to like that movie. Mad
Max. I put Mad Max up there.
That's what Mel Gibson.
Yeah,
That's when Mel Gibson was young, man.
Lethal Weapon
movies. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. So there's quite a bit. RoboCop
RoboCop.
would be another action movie I liked a lot when I was a kid.
That traumatized me. We were talking about it yesterday.
Yeah.
About that scene when Murphy falls down. For those that haven't watched this movie, there's a specific scene where
Yeah, go YouTube it.
yeah, go YouTube it where the main character gets. This is how he becomes RoboCop. He gets pushed as a cop. He gets pushed and he gets bullied or whatever. He gets what is it? Jumped in there or whatever. He gets beat up.
Yeah.
And then they blow off his.
They pretty much waste this guy. Like,
Yeah.
anything you could think of that could happen to you with a shotgun happens to this guy. He gets blown to pieces.
So the first one, to me as a kid, they blow off his hand with a shotgun.
Yeah.
And the guy actually, it looks like he's playing with him at first, right? He's like, and then boom.
Yeah, I mean, he's just that sadistic. That's the part that makes it crazy. He doesn't even care.
Yeah, so he blows off his hand, and then you see the main character, which is Murphy. You can see his face like all in shock.
He's
Well,
like,
that was well, that was my face too as a kid. I was like,
yeah, I was traumatized when I saw that.
Yeah, I saw that. I was traumatized.
Like, what the heck am I watching?
Yeah, that scene at that time as a kid, it was brutal. I think even now it's still brutal.
Yeah, it is.
It's still brutal.
It's still brutal scenes. You don't even see that in movies anymore.
but RoboCop was a good movie.
Yeah, RoboCop's great.
COP. What is it? COP. Whatever the cop.
I forget.
The business model. COP.
COP.
Something like that. I forget.
I forgot too.
Yeah, but go watch that movie if you haven't seen RoboCop. I think it's better than the new whatever, the upgraded version of it.
Yeah.
But RoboCop, yeah. So let's move on to the next genre. Let's go with the horror films. Horror films. You want to do that?
Yeah.
Oh, but even before we forget about the action films. You forgot an action film that my dad used to watch. And I wasn't a big fan of him, but he used to watch them all the time because this guy was a big star in the 80s. Eddie Murphy and Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah, those are great movies.
I was never a big fan.
I loved Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy was Another 48 Hours. Do you remember that movie too? Another 48 Hours?
No, I don't recall that one.
So, yeah, that dude was big. And then his laughter. You remember that?
He was a great comedian too.
Yeah, well
Yeah,
that's where he started,
America.
yeah. Well, that one too, huh? Coming to America. I was never a big Eddie Murphy fan. I would watch his movies, but I was not like, it's like whatever.
Yeah,
It wasn't like my thing. I know my dad used to love those movies. The Golden Child. I remember The Golden Child. Remember that movie?
Yeah,
like
that
this bald kid.
That one's good.
And so, yeah, I remember all those movies. My dad was a big fan of them. Okay, let's move on to a different genre. Let's go horror movies.
Okay.
This is the one thing I love about horror movies in the 80s. Either you're a slasher, a killer, or somebody. And you know the top four? You know who they were, right?
For Freddy, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers. And, I don't know, Hellraiser.
The guy from Hellraiser, yeah.
I put Chucky or...
Child's Play, yeah.
Child's Play.
Yeah.
It the Clown.
Nah, it was like the 90s.
90s?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It could have been 89, but I think it's 90s. Yeah. How about these movies then? Let's talk about these movies then. Let's talk about, like you said, Child's Play, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Hellraiser, and Poltergeist. I remember Poltergeist.
Yeah, Poltergeist was great too.
Yeah. But all those movies where we talked about, Child's Play and Chucky. Did you ever like that movie?
That's actually the one movie out of all those movies. That's the one movie that scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
I know you're a big fan because you even went to go watch the recent one that came out in the movies, right?
Yeah, I want to go see the recent one, and because Mark Hamill was playing the new Chucky, and it was the same director as the last It. So I was like, man, it's probably gonna be good, and it was. It had its moments. It was pretty good.
I was never a big Child's Play guy. I wasn't like that movie. I watched it, but I was like, eh. After the first one, it was done.
Yeah, no, the first one was the best one. I think the second one was decent, but the first one was definitely the classic.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Were you a big fan of it?
Yeah, I love Freddy Krueger.
I was a big fan of Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street is all of them, man. They're all classics. You can't.
Yeah. Well, he's a pop culture icon.
He's a culture icon, yeah.
What was it, Robert Englund?
Robert Englund, yeah.
He's big. Everybody knows him as Freddy Krueger.
It's Freddy Krueger, yeah.
So those that don't know who Freddy Krueger is, the guy with the blades in his hands, the glove.
Yep, and you couldn't fall asleep because if you fell asleep, we're gonna be right in his alley.
Yeah, you know what? As a kid, I used to freak myself out with that song that the little girls be singing. Remember that song? 1, 2,
Into Freddy's coming for you.
yeah, that one.
Yeah.
3, 4, better lock your doors. Remember that song?
Yeah, no, it was scary as hell, dude.
So I remember those songs, and I as a kid, I would freak myself out because at school, a lot of us would be talking about it. I'm like, oh, Freddy Krueger, this, Freddy. It was over for me. Just
yeah,
just that.
well, because once you're asleep, you're screwed. So you have
Yeah.
to stay up like all night long, every night. And how long can you do that? So that's what made him so scary.
Yeah. Do you remember the first Freddy Krueger?
Yeah, I do.
You know who was on in the first Freddy Krueger? Do you remember that? Some of the actors. There was a big actor there. Matter of fact,
Wasn't it Johnny Depp?
Johnny Depp. Yeah.
Johnny Depp, right?
Yeah, Johnny Depp. He's the one that actually gets pulled into the bed, right? And his guts go flying up
Yeah, that's him.
into the water bed or something like that.
Yeah,
Remember that scene?
Yeah, I remember that scene where he gets pulled into the bed and it's like water. And then next thing you know,
Maybe I'm confusing. Was it just because there was a scene where like he gets pulled into the bed by like his.
I didn't know if that was Johnny Depp, but like I
Yeah.
know exactly what scene you're talking about.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's the waterbed part. That
No,
was a different one.
It's
Wasn't
a bed, and then he turns it into like a pool
Yeah,
where he yanks him in, and then next thing you know, his guts are flying out of the
like onto the
bed.
ceiling,
Into
right?
the ceiling, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Freddy Krueger was good. I like his humor. He had like the freak ass humor,
Dark,
right?
he had dark humor, and then he was sadistic and sick. He was sadistic and sick.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I loved Nightmare on Elm Street specifically because of him. Him, that hat, that ugly ass sweater he wore. And
Yeah.
his glove.
His glove is a classic.
Even with his remake, did you see the remake of that movie, Nightmare on Elm Street?
I did, but I don't remember much of it.
The one thing they made that movie look into, he was more of he didn't have the same his personality wasn't the same. He didn't have the sarcastic, like how he was sarcastic in the 80s one.
Mhm.
He was kind of like funny. He had like this like weird type of
Dark humor,
Yeah.
and he would mess with your head. And
Yeah, well, the updated version or the remake didn't have that. The guy was like dark. He just wanted to kill you. It just wasn't the same personality. That's why I don't think that movie worked.
No, I didn't. I remember that because it wasn't Robert Englund, right?
No, it wasn't.
That played it. It was a different guy.
Yeah, it was a different guy.
So I remember I lost interest immediately.
Yeah, I mean,
'Cause
I watched
it. Had a
it.
lot to do with him.
I mean, I watched it. They wanted to make it more
Yeah.
scary, but it wasn't. One of the reasons that the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise was good, it was because they had Robert Englund in it, and because of his
yeah, and the
dark
actor has
humor. Yeah.
the actor has a lot to do with
Yeah.
definitely with the role.
Do you remember which one's your favorite?
For me, second one was
Which
the
one's that?
favorite.
Which one was that?
Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the one that he's that you hardly see Freddy Krueger, right? That's trying to come through his body or whatever, like coming out, his head's coming out the guy's
Yeah.
like stomach.
I don't know why, but that one always scared the hell out of me when I was a kid.
I like the Dream Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
The Dream Warriors. I remember that. Dream Warriors, and I remember the fourth one. I want to say, God, I forget, but I want to say 3 and 4 were pretty good to me. Pretty.
Yeah,
the
3
Dream
is
Child,
good.
All those. Yeah, but yeah, I used to love Child Play. I mean, not Child Play, but Nightmare on Elm Street. How about Friday the 13th? Were you a big Friday the 13th?
Yeah, I love Jason.
He's
I
amazing.
love Jason. I used to dress like him all the time in Halloween.
Really?
Because that was one of my favorite
Oh yeah.
serial. I guess one of my favorite slashers from that
Yeah,
time.
he was a slasher guy, right?
Yeah, and he had the hockey mask, and it was anytime around Halloween, you always see those
Everybody-
hockey masks
Yeah.
all over the place. All you need is overalls.
I lost interest at the 13th movie or something because that franchise had so many sequels. You remember that?
Yeah,
God, too many.
I forget which one this one is, but there's one where he's in New York,
Okay.
and I remember there's this one scene where like he's chasing this guy, and he's a boxer, and he's like, "I'll box you, motherfucker," and then he's like swinging at him, and then next thing you know, Jason just like he hits him in the face. Jason does a nudge, and then he just hits the other guy, and his head starts flying down the stairs like a basketball.
Oh, okay.
He knocked his head right off.
See,
Like,
that's the thing with Freddy.
It's
I
pretty
mean, with
crazy.
Friday the 13th. He's everywhere. He's in New York this time.
Yeah.
They go back to Camp Christie, or he's at the boat now. Remember that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm telling you, I lost interest in in those franchises when they went past 8 or something.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of
Yeah, but I was a big
of Jasons.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Jason. I still, like I said, everybody who hasn't worn a Jason mask, dude, come on.
Yeah,
For
at one
Halloween.
point. Exactly.
Right? How about this movie, Hellraiser? Are you a big fan of Hellraiser?
Not as much.
Pinhead?
Pinhead was he's a sick looking character. I just
Yeah.
never understood the concept of the movie. I know it was like kind of
He's like a demon or something like that, and they're collecting souls. I was never a big fan of the franchise, but yeah, Hellraiser was big.
yeah.
You know, we talked about Child's Play. Did we talk about Halloween?
No, we didn't. I was about to bring that up. I was gonna say the original Halloween with Mary Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah, that was good.
That's a classic, dude.
It is. It's
To
still
me,
classic.
that's one of the greatest, if not the best, slasher film.
You know, it's funny because I watch in October. You know how they pass all these horror movies, and usually they're the 80s horror movies.
Yeah.
And I love
Because those are the best. Those are the best ones.
And usually it's the this specific one, Halloween, the first one, like with the one you just talked about right now with Jamie Lee Curtis. The first one's always pretty good. Even the last one. Did you watch the last one?
The ones made by Rob Zombie, or is that? Are you talking about the very?
No, like the last one that they just.
The last one with Jamie Lee Curtis
Yeah.
again. I thought that one was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It was pretty
They're
good.
doing another one too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't ever get. For some reason, with Michael Myers, it doesn't ever get old. For some reason.
I don't know if this one's a horror movie, but Gremlins. Much of the Gremlins.
Gremlins, yeah. I'll still put that under horror.
Even this movie, I remember watching this movie and I got freaked out. I remember watching it with my pops. I was like, "What the hell am I watching, dude?" It's called American Werewolf in London. You ever watching that movie?
Yeah, I've seen that movie before.
Yeah, but I watched it as a kid and I was freaked the F out, dude. I was like, "What the hell?" When he starts turning into the wolf.
Into the wolf and stuff, yeah.
God, that thing was just... It was scaring me, man. That was
Yeah.
scaring me as a kid. Yeah, man. How about a Fright Night?
Fright Night, no. I
You
haven't
never
seen
watched that
one.
movie?
Mm-mm.
Wow. That one's good because he's a teenager and nobody believes him that his next door neighbor is a vampire.
Yeah.
So it was good. Kind of reminds me of The Lost Boys, but it wasn't. Lost Boys was actually a better movie.
Yeah.
Lost Boys. How about The Fly? You remember watching The Fly?
The Fly, yes. The Fly is a great movie with Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah. The Gate. You ever watch The Gate? They open up a portal to...
Stargate or
No, The Gate.
The Gate?
Yeah,
no, I
it's
haven't
about
seen
these
that one.
kids that open up a portal to the underworld or whatever because of the music they listen to.
Mm-mm.
Kind of like they base on their, like back in the days, people would think that like metal rock or just metal, like heavy metal, was music of the devil, and they would like if you like play the record backwards.
It would be like Satan talking.
So yeah,
or something
well,
like
that the movie is based on something like that.
Yeah.
Where these kids are listening to this vinyl, or they're doing what the vinyl says or whatever, and they open up a gate to the underworld or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, it was a good movie. I remember that movie. It's pretty good. Any other horror movies you remember?
Put Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
You watched that one?
That one.
Remember?
Not a lot of people like that movie, but for me, it was the clowns were like so freaking scary
I don't remember that movie.
to me.
I've
Like,
seen the
that
cover
was-
though.
That movie's they're actually gonna have them this year at Universal for the Horror Nights. They're gonna be one of the main events. But
Really? I thought it was it. Isn't it?
it
they're
could
doing
be
a
it
Stranger
too.
Things. I'm sorry.
hmm
They're doing a Stranger Things one.
But I thought that movie's pretty great.
Okay, you want to move genre there?
Sure.
Well, let's go to this. Let's go to teen flicks. And this is the thing with 80s movies. Feel-good movies and teen flicks
Mm-hmm.
that everyone loved back in those days. And I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you, I think your wife will know some of these movies. They're called teen flicks or Brat Pack films, usually by John Hughes or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They go like this. The Breakfast Club. Who hasn't seen a Breakfast Club? Come on, man.
Yep.
Fast Times at Richmond High.
Yep.
Mannequin.
Mhm.
Porky's. Pretty in
Porky's.
Pink. Pretty in Pink, you know.
Yeah.
Molly Ringwald. Everybody knows Molly Ringwald. 16 Candles. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I actually love that movie.
Yeah, I love that movie too.
So, yeah. Weird Science.
Weird Science.
Valley Girl.
Valley Girl.
And other popular films include Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Dirty Dancing. My wife just asked me.
Dirty.
I want to watch Dirty Dancing. I've never seen it. I always see it everywhere. I go, hell no.
Oh, every girl loved Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze.
He was a 80s icon right
Yeah,
there.
he was. How about this one? Footloose. Remember
Yeah.
Footloose?
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. Raging Bull.
Raging Bull's great.
Yeah, I don't remember watching that one at all.
That's with De Niro and Joe Pesci. Raging
Really?
Bull.
I don't. Oh, he's a boxer, right? Black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think so. I think I've seen parts of it. So I haven't watched it all. Big. You remember that movie, Big?
Big. That's one of my favorite movies as a kid.
Yeah, that was good.
Because you go to that machine and you put the quarter in. It tells you.
Well, he wished for a wish.
He wished for a wish that came true, and
Yeah.
he became, an adult.
Yeah.
And he he's a little kid, and he ends up getting a girlfriend, and
Yeah.
he's like tripping out because he's doing adult things.
Yeah. So
It's like crazy.
moral of the movie. The moral. What is it? The moral of the movie. Stay young because
Stay young.
he didn't like the adult world. He wanted to go
No.
back to being a kid.
You want to go back to being a kid?
Yeah. Even though it's fun at the beginning because he was doing all the stuff on his own. But
Yeah, well, because he was all rich, and then he bought a bunch of toys, but then he didn't have anybody to do kid stuff with. 'Cause
Yeah.
he was an adult now.
Yeah, because he was a big kid still inside,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't like the adult world yet. Cause
Yeah.
he was still enjoying the kid world.
Yeah.
How about Uncle Buck?
John Candy.
John Candy.
I love Uncle Buck, man.
Uncle Buck, yeah, that was a good movie, right?
He's badass, dude, in that movie.
Him and his you remember his car? He had this humongous boat,
Yeah. And
a
then
Buick or something like that.
well, the best line for me is when he's like, here's a quarter. Why don't you take this quarter and have a rat gnaw that thing off your face or something like that? Like the lady was talking trash to him about his niece, and he was having his niece's back, and
Yeah.
it was a funny scene, man. You got to see it.
No,
It's like,
it's good. It's a good movie.
yeah,
It's
definitely a great movie.
Kid comes out. That one kid comes out. Well, he's not a kid anymore, but at the time, the kid from Home Alone, didn't he come on? That
Macaulay
movie?
Culkin, yeah.
Yeah, he's like the little kid. This is before the Home Alone movies, I want to say.
Yeah, it was.
Right? Because
Yeah, it was before
the Home Alone movies was 89, 90, and 91 or something around that time.
Yeah, it was early 90s, I would
So,
say.
that's when he got big.
Yeah.
Dirty Dancing. We already talked about Dirty Dancing. Heidi wants to do you ever seen those commercials where they're doing the dirty dancing and they put the girl over their shoulder or whatever?
Uh-huh.
You seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Hell no. Anybody wants to do that? Good luck. Okay, we're gonna get dropped.
Salsa.
We're gonna get dropped. And obviously James Bond films. Who didn't watch a James Bond film in the 80s, man? Roger Moore, For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, View to Kill, and License to Kill, and The Living Daylight. Those are movies.
Yeah,
Any other
they are.
movies you want to talk about that you love but didn't make your top 10? Like me, I'm going to tell you, Beetlejuice is one of my...
Yeah, I was going to say Beetlejuice, too.
Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice is great, man.
It is. I hope they make another one.
Yeah, that'd be a great movie. I heard they were with the same cast, Michael Keaton and...
They want to. I don't know. I think Michael Keaton doesn't want to do it or something like that.
Okay.
He was the last one not to want to do it, but everybody else was on board because he felt that he already did that character, and that was not gonna make a what's it called? He wanted a challenge or whatever. You know how actors go; they need a challenge.
Yeah.
But he was a great Beetlejuice.
I wanted, on the horror, I just wanted to add Critters.
Critters.
Yeah, I love that. I love that movie when I was a kid.
Tremors. You remember what Tremors?
Tremors is sick, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Blob. You remember the Blob? The Blob.
The Blob, and then there's this movie with James Woods, and he's a vampire slasher guy, and it's in the 80s too.
It's not Fright Night. That's Fright Night.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but he's a badass dude, and he's like a vampire slasher, and he's like a biker guy. He's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool movie.
Damn, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the movie off the top of my head, but it was a good.
There's a lot of movies in the 80s that are great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies. There's too much. We could be here all day. Like you said, we didn't even talk about that one.
Yeah, Big Trouble Little China.
Big Trouble Little China.
This movie's great too. Like Kurt Russell, another guy that's huge in the 80s. He had a lot of classic movies himself.
Yeah, he was good. I love that 80s thing.
I wanted to add for sci-fi was Blade Runner.
Blade Runner.
Because I think that movie is a cult classic, and it was way ahead of its time, and definitely a movie I would always recommend if anybody want to see old films. Definitely check out that movie.
Oh, we talked about 80s movies. You want to move on to music, pop culture?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on. I mean, is there anybody that we didn't mention in movies other than Arnold Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Mel Gibson, Harrison Ford, Patrick Swayze, and Bill Murray.
Van Damme.
Van
Jean-Claude
Damme.
Van Damme.
God, you ever
Jean-Claude.
Van Damme?
Yeah.
You ever watching was it Bel Air, the kid of Bel Air? What's his name?
Fresh Prince?
You remember watching Fresh Prince?
Yeah.
There was a scene where he's looking at himself in the mirror and he goes, "God, Van Damme, I'm fine." You ever seen that? You remember that? You never seen that?
No, I never seen
Yeah,
that.
he says
But that sounds funny.
Yeah. Kurt Russell, you said. Jack Nicholson, Michael J. Fox, Tom Cruise. Risky business. Risky business.
Heck yeah.
That's where everybody, he's dancing on his underwear when he's sliding through the floor. I know every girl's seen that.
That scene, definitely.
Bruce Willis, Michelle Pfeiffer, Charlie Sheen, Kim Basinger. She's on Batman.
Kim Basinger? Yeah.
She was hot back in those days.
Yeah, she was. What about that movie with Chevy Chase for National Lampoons?
Oh, National
Was that in the
Holiday
80s too,
Vacation.
or-
Yeah, that was Vacation, yeah.
That was 80s too, right?
He had a bunch of them.
Yeah, those are like great movies for the holidays and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like, show your kids and like.
He had one for the summer. He had one for the
Yeah, for any
Christmas.
occasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
For Christmas.
They had the airplane movies. They had the Pink Panther movies.
Yeah.
I was never a big fan of those, but they were big in those days.
Yeah, they were.
And Steven Spielberg was all over the place too.
Yeah, he was.
He was from E.T. to he had his hands in
That movie was big too, E.T.
yeah, E.T. You remember E.T.?
Yeah.
We didn't even talk about E.T.
Yeah, E.T. was a big movie in the
We
80s.
talk about E.T. Do you remember E.T.?
Yeah.
E.T. Phone Home. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember E.T. and all those commercials for E.T. when it came out. Like, it was like AT&T commercials and even the ride in Universal Studios, dude. Like, I remember
Right?
there was a ride there, and you'd say your name, and then E.T. would tell your name at the end and stuff.
E.T.
But you're on a bike and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Like, you're supposedly like running away from the cops and stuff. Like,
Did it make you cry? That's all I want to know. Did it make you cry at the end of the movie?
yeah, I did.
God.
Yeah, I did. I was a little kid.
Okay, yeah. No, man, I get you, but I want to say I remember that movie, but I wasn't a big fan. What's her name used to come out there as a little girl? Let's move on then,
Okay.
because we're getting into the second section of the second part of the podcast. Hi guys, this is Gus with the Everything Goes podcast. Sorry, but we're gonna have to end the episode right here, right now. And we're going to have an episode part 2 next week. It's just too much to talk about the 80s. We go on forever. So thank you for listening. And remember, guys, you could always catch us on the Everything Goes podcast on Instagram. You could catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube. Remember, guys, if you guys like, leave a message on the Apple Podcast and leave a rating. It'll be gladly appreciated. So I'll catch you guys next week. Thanks.